This video is dedicated to the amazing Photoshop team at Adobe who create and develop a tool for us that actually makes magic. Thank you so much on behalf of our entire PiXimperfect community. With the release of later versions of Photoshop right from 2015.5, you brought in a revolution with some new features that we can practically apply in our workflows. The whole select and mask workspace, select subject, object selection tool, content aware fill, pattern preview, sky replacements, those were all amazing. And by the way, the way select subject has developed in getting it so right is absolutely mind-boggling. I feel that in the hustle and bustle of fun neural filters and sky replacements, which are fantastic, some essential features might have been left out that keep the true spirit of Photoshop. In this video, I will attempt to highlight the top 16 features and improvements that I truly wish to see in the upcoming versions of Photoshop. And to our PiXimperfect community, if you have some feature suggestions for Adobe, do let them know in the comments. Dear Adobe, before we begin, please understand that I'm not a developer. I don't understand what is or isn't possible in the world of code. So please forgive me if I say something which isn't possible. Although, I sure am a Photoshop user like most of us in the channel, and we have an idea of what we want. So without any further ado, let's get started. Back in the magical world of Photoshop thanks to Adobe, and the first thing we're going to talk about is how cool would it be if we had sharpening as an adjustment layer. So right now, what are the ways of sharpening? Number one is high pass, right? And for high pass, we need to create a stamp visible layer at the top. So here we have an image. We just applied a little bit of Liquify to it and a little bit of color grading. Now what we have to do, we need to press Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E. This merges everything that you see in the canvas at the top as a separate layer. Now in this layer, you need to press Ctrl Shift U, Command Shift U to desaturate it, and then go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, hit OK so that this is a smart object. And then Filter, Other, and then High Pass, and apply a high pass of your choice. So I'm going to leave it at 4.2, hit OK, and change the blend mode to Overlay or Soft Light. Now as you can see, this is sharp, right? Here's the before, and here is the after. Looks pretty good, but there's a problem with that. You know what it is? Let's say I change a little bit in the Liquify. So if I go down to Liquify and if I open that, I change something. Let's do something drastic so that you can see the changes. So if we move her entire face a little bit to the right, see what happens. Hit OK. Now have a look at this. The sharpening is at someplace else and the image is at someplace else. This is a problem. I have to redo the sharpening. Even if we were resizing the entire image for some reason, so if I select the Liquify layer and if I just resize it just a little bit, the same problem will occur. Have a look at this. The sharpening still is at the same place. And that's a problem, my friend. And what are the other ways of sharpening, you might ask? Well, that also involves creating a stamp visible layer. So we again will have to press Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E. All right, stamp visible layer. And then go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, hit OK, and then Filter, Sharpen. And there are lots of ways we can do it. Unsharp Mask, Smart Sharpen. So let's go for Smart Sharpen. And we're going to choose some easy values, hit OK. This also does a pretty good job, but there's a problem with this as well. What if I wanted to make a change somewhere down below? This is sharp. So here is the before, here is the after. If I wanted to change the Liquify, I would have to again delete this, create a smart object, and then go through that mess. Another way is grouping all the layers into a smart object and then apply sharpening to it. But then if you want to change everything, you would have to open it up in another document. It'll be again a whole mess. How cool would it be if we had an adjustment layer for sharpening? So just like we have curves, hue, saturation as an adjustment layer, which is independent of everything. So right now, even if I take down the saturation, I can make a change in Liquify and the changes will still be intact. I wouldn't have to recreate hue saturation from scratch, right? So that's why Adobe, we would highly appreciate if you can just give sharpening as an adjustment layer. Let's move on to the next one. So what do we usually do when we are exporting something for social media? We haphazardly save it in desktop and from there export it to Facebook or Twitter or whatever platform there is, right? What if we could define folders for quick export? So right in here, I made something for a live stream and I want to post it on Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms. So right now we would have to go to File, Export, Export As, locate the desktop, save it there. Instead of doing that, what if we could go to File, Export, and Quick Export as PNG? Just press that and it will save it in a location that you have specified earlier. So right now, if you go to Export Preferences, you have the options for Quick Export Format, which you can define, and the location. Right now, you only have two options. One is ask where to export each time, which means each time you click on that button, it'll ask you so that you have to locate it. Or secondly, you can choose to export files to an asset folder next to the current document. And here's my suggestion to Adobe. What if we had one more option where we could define specific folders for specific type of work? For example, one folder for social, one for portfolio, one for something else. And then when you define that and you hit OK, we would have that folders right here. So that all we have to do is to go to File, Export, and right here you would see those folders like social, portfolio, regular work, and few others. And if it's something you're exporting for social media, all you have to do is to click on social and it will be automatically saved to that folder quickly. So this is a big one and I'm pretty upset at that. It's 2020 and Photoshop still does not support HEIC file format on Windows. For a person like me who uses both Windows and Mac, iOS and Android, it gets really difficult. As being in the teaching profession, I have to use all kinds of devices, and one of those devices is an iPhone and an iPad. So with it, if I capture some images in HEIC file format, which has its own advantages of cropping and editing on iOS devices, I really can't open them in Photoshop. So this is a photo that I took with my phone. Even Windows Photo Viewer can open it. So I was researching about it and I also found this thread in Adobe forums. And the correct answer here says, an HEIC file is an Apple-created file type using the H.264 data format in order to make photo files smaller in size with as good or better resolution than JPEG. So far so good. Now hear this. But Windows doesn't like it at all. I don't understand this statement because Windows Photo Viewer, even if you just double click it, it opens. So you know where we stand. So let's go back there again. So you can download a free tool here. I don't want to download a conversion tool to convert it and then why? Why do I have to do that? So right now, if you just drag it and drop it inside of Photoshop, if you try to do that, it just won't open. Camera Raw does not support HEIC files on Windows. This is crazy. And I must say, Adobe, even your rivals, which are smaller company than yours, support it. So if I open that up, Adobe is going to hate me for this. So if I right click and choose Open With and choose Affinity Photo, it just opens on a Windows machine. Come on now, if Affinity Photo can do it, you can do it too. One of the little features that I absolutely love about Photoshop is Scrubby Zoom. As you're working with Photoshop, it's so easy that all you have to do is to hold the Control or Command and the space bar and drag it right or left to zoom in and zoom out. And look how smooth this is. So darn smooth. But unfortunately, it does not work this way in Liquify. So if you open up the Liquify dialog box, Scrubby Zoom just doesn't work. You have to make a rectangle of the area that you want to zoom in and then it zooms in that area. It would be so convenient if we had Scrubby Zoom in Liquify. The great thing about smart filters in Photoshop is that you can stack up as many as you want. You can change the order. You can turn them off or on. However, the one thing that I wish would be improved was that what if we had different masks for different smart filters, and that can be very useful. So let's say in this case, on one side, we just want some text, and for that side, we want to blur it and maybe brighten it up a little bit. So first of all, let's convert this layer into a smart object by going to filter and then convert for smart filters. Now let's add a Gaussian blur by going to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur. Look how nicely it'll be added. So we're gonna blur it a little bit to about 150, hit OK. Have a look. This has been added as a smart filter and it comes with a mask, which is pretty amazing. Now what we're gonna do is make a selection of the area where we want to add the text, which is right here. Okay. And then select the mask and fill it with black. So this is the exact opposite of what we wanted. Press Ctrl or Command D, select the mask again and press Ctrl or Command I to invert it. So far so good. Now what if we wanted to also brighten that area in the form of a gradient? So select that layer again and then go to Image, Adjustments and then Curves. Alright, and we're gonna brighten the shadows by taking the point on the extreme left up, just like this. And also making it a little brighter. Something like this looks pretty okay. Hit OK. Now here's the actual problem. What if we wanted to add this brightness as a gradient from top to bottom? We can't do it anymore. You know why? Because we don't have another mask available for the curves. If we wanted to do it, it would be pretty complicated. We would have to delete the curves here and create a curves adjustment layer instead and do the same things right there. Okay, and copy the same mask by holding the Alt key or the Option key, click and drag it to the curves mask, which is not happening. So you would have to make a selection by holding the Control or Command, clicking on the mask, and then select the curves mask and fill it up with black, and then invert it, and then put it in a group, and then create a mask for the group, and then with the gradient you can then just apply it in a gradient. That's so complicated. Other ways, you can make a duplicate of the layer with just that area, and on top of that you can create a clipping mask with curves. There are lots of ways, but wouldn't it be so compact? Let's delete all of this. Wouldn't it be so compact if we just had multiple masks for different smart filters? So that way, whenever you add an adjustment or a filter, they would have their own mask. You can do whatever you want, and then the best part is it would stay compact. So let's say I applied this, I would have another mask for curves right here, which I can apply as a gradient, and then I can simply press this arrow and it would just be one layer, so compact. So here's my recommendation. Each smart filter should get its own mask, and if you don't want masks somewhere, you can always delete the mask and make that area smaller. After all, masks are safe too. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is having the option to select source for blend-if. What do we mean by that? Let me quickly show that to you. So let's say in the background you wanted a pattern, and by the way, we showed this in a previous video. So first of all, let's click on the adjustment layer icon right over there, and let's choose pattern, and let's choose a fancy pattern, and this is the one that I got online. Hit OK, and then we choose the blend mode from normal to multiply. Let's change it that way, and also we don't want it on the subject, so select the background layer, and this is what I also love about Photoshop, and that is select subject. So now the subject will be selected automatically, and it does an amazing job. Let's turn on the pattern and fill that area with black. All right, this is good. And we don't want multiply in the bright areas. So what do? We double click on the right side of the layer. The layer styles dialog box shows up, and in the blend-if section, we can take it away from the bright areas of the underlying layer, or the layer which is under it. In this case, it is the background layer, right? So far so good. So we can take it away from bright areas. As you can see, it's very harsh. So hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on the slider to break it apart, and take it all the way apart. Something like this looks realistic. Now for the bright areas, we're going to make one more copy. Press Ctrl or Command J of this pattern, and this time let's change the blend mode to screen, and this is for the bright areas. We double click on the right hand side of the layer, reset the blend-if, and I want to take this away this time from the dark areas, because we don't want the bright shine on the dark areas, right? So right now, if I take the slider on the left to the right, it doesn't quite go in that pattern. It also considers the bright areas of this pattern as well. What if we could choose a source for it? What if we had one more slider right here where we could choose the source to be the background layer, not the underlying layer? Right now it considers all of the layers that are under it if we play with the underlying layer sliders. What if we had one more slider right here where we could pick out the source? For instance, where we could choose that we only want to pick the background layer as a source or any other layer as a source, and then based on the luminosity of that layer, we can just take it away from the bright areas or dark areas. Right now, it is also considering the pattern underneath, which might not be as realistic. Yes, it works, but it would be pretty cool if we had one more slider where we could pick the source which it could reference from. Right now, it is just the current layer or the underlying layers combined. We don't have an option for picking a specific layer or maybe a group of layers. The next feature that I would love to have here, which might sound a little stupid, but I really want this, and that is a clipping mask for a clipping mask. So in this case, we have a sunglass masked out, and we have a solid yellow background. So let's say we want to add some highlights by creating a curves adjustment layer. We brightened this up something like this, and we created a clipping mask by clicking on this button right over there. And then with the masks right here, press Ctrl or Command I, and take a soft round brush right here, and we just painted a few highlights here and there. Now what if we wanted to add the photo filter adjustment layer just to these highlight areas? Right now the only way to do that is creating the photo filter adjustment layer and just adjust it in a way that you want, and copy the mask right here. Hold the Alt or Option, click and drag the mask, replace layer mask, yes, and then apply it also as a clipping mask. which is great. Now we can change it to whatever color we wish. We can have a warming filter, we can have a cooling filter. Different effects right here might look pretty cool. But the problem here is this: any change I want to make to this mask right here, let's say I wanted to remove the highlight from a certain area. So let's paint in black in this area. The problem is the photo filter is still on the inside. We would have to just again hold the Alt key or the Option key, click and drag the mask to the photo filter, hit yes. Again, make that change in the photo filter mask as well. Instead of having to do all that, what if we could have a clipping mask for a clipping mask? This way we could apply the photo filter adjustment layer as a clipping mask to the curves adjustment layer, which is also a clipping mask. So a clipping mask for a clipping mask would be so convenient. Right now we can't do it. We just have to work with double masks and make sure both the masks are the same. Now I do agree that there are a couple of workarounds to achieve this, but if we had this feature, it would get pretty convenient in my opinion. Speaking of clipping masks, this brings us to our next feature in our wish list, and that is using groups as clipping masks. Right now, as of recording this video, we cannot do that. Have a look at this example. This is a composite that we made for a tutorial. If you haven't watched it, you can watch it right here. So here we have the background, and on top of that, we have the subject. Now first, we applied some color adjustments to the subject with these 3 adjustment layers. The first one was curves, and then a gradient map, and then another curves. We matched it pretty much. After that, we did some highlights and shadows just to make it a little more realistic. But it is so much in a mess. How wonderful would it be if we could group all of these adjustment layers based on what they do? For instance, the first 3 just make little adjustments to the color, and after that the next 4 or 5 are for highlights and shadows, so we can group them as highlights and shadows and then clip it. Right now we can't do it. So if you group something, so let's say we group these 3, we can't apply a group as a clipping mask. It is just not possible. If I try to hold the Alt key or the Option key, and if I try to click on the line between these 2 layers, nothing happens. You cannot create a clipping mask with a group in it. So I really wish this feature existed so that we can just organize all of these layers. So we could have this group for color matching. We can have these for highlights and shadows, these 5 or 6 for highlights and shadows. But right now, we can't do it. It's just getting weirder because it's just not possible. Now, besides organization as an advantage, it will also allow you to collectively just change the opacity, again create a mask for that group. There are lots of advantages and convenience as well. One of the presets I use all the time while creating a new document in Photoshop is the 1080p preset. It is inside Art and Illustration, and right here you will find 1080p, very useful for creating YouTube thumbnails or even simple Facebook posts. Now it is 2020 and most of us are working with 4K screens, and 4K is slowly and gradually becoming the standard. But there is no preset for 4K. Yes, we can create our own presets, but I would really be happy if you had a 4K preset right there, which is 3840 by 2160 pixels. This one is a pretty simple request. Could you please add previews for color lookup tables just as you did with blend modes? That would be awesome. So right now, if we add a color lookup adjustment layer, there is no preview as we just scroll through these presets. Yes, if you're using Windows, there's one thing you can do. You can choose one of the presets, and with the mouse, you can just scroll through it, just like this. But that is actually selecting a preset. Right now, there is no way I can just move through all the presets and see a preview of them. You did it great with blend modes. So now with blend modes, we can see a preview. I would really love to see with color lookup tables. Luminar is doing it, so I'm sure you can too. The match color feature in Photoshop definitely needs an update. We want a non-destructive version of it, and we want a version that actually works. Right now, have a look at this. So we have the subject and a background, and let's say we want to match the color of the subject with that of the background. If we go to image adjustments, there is indeed an option to match the color, and we can choose background layer as the source. And by the way, this is the similar thing that I was asking for blend if areas. Anyway, so let's choose the source as this document first of all, and let's choose the background layer. Now, if we look at it, have a look. It's just not matching so good. So first of all, let's just match the luminosity. It seems to be okay. Maybe let's increase the color and just fade it a little bit. Well, not even close. It just kind of sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. It's a hit or miss. And the worst part is this is destructive. Even if you convert this layer into a smart object by going to filter and then convert for smart filters, hit OK. if you go to image adjustments and match color, right here is grayed out. So it doesn't work with smart objects, which is a major downside for this feature. Although I'm not a developer, but I can tell you this, Photoshop has the technology to match colors, even if it is very slight and subtle. It has it. So with the latest edition of sky replacements, have a look. This is a bright daylight, right? So if I add an extreme sky by going to edit and then a sky replacement and choose an extreme sky like this, and if we just increase the color adjustment to the most, and let's make a little adjustment here and there, and we apply it, have a look at this. It creates a layer for matching the color. So this is the before, this is the after. Even though this is very subtle, the technology is still there, you know, and the best part is you can go inside a curves and adjust it the way you want. It's non-destructive as well. Only if we could get this technology for match color, it would be amazing. The next one is a pretty simple request, but I understand that as a developer, it might be very hard to apply. I'm not sure. And that is increasing the limit for PSD files. You see, PSD files are the default file format for Photoshop. That is the standard that most of us use. However, with the latest cameras, you can capture up to 150 megapixels. And with images like these, it easily goes beyond 2 GB. So in that case, we have to save it either as PSB or we have to save it as TIFF, which again has a limit of 4 GB. So only if we could have the standard file format, which is the PSD file format, to remove its limit, it would be definitely a blessing for us. Wouldn't it be great if we could have the lens flare on its own layer and also effective at the same time? Right now, there are lots of challenges to this. It's possible, but lots of workarounds. Have a look at this. So let's say we want to add lens flare to this. So we would have to first of all press Ctrl or Command J. This is one way of doing it. Yes, you can convert this layer into a smart object by going to filter and convert for smart filters, hit OK. And then apply lens flare by going to filter, render and lens flare. Yes, you can move the point right here, apply the lens flare. I'm just going to make it super bright to make it visible for you guys. Hit OK. The good part is it works with smart objects. And yes, you can open up lens flare, change the position and the brightness, which is pretty darn impressive. But the problem is, let's say you wanted to remove the lens flare from certain areas, or you wanted to blur the lens flare, just the lens flare. In that case, you would want the lens flare independent of everything on a brand new layer of its own. Because right now, if you try to blur the lens flare by going to filter, blur and then Gaussian blur, the image will be blurred too. Right? We definitely don't want that. So let's cancel it. The other workaround here is that creating a brand new layer, filling it up with black, and then going to filter, convert for smart filters, hit OK, change the blend mode to screen, and here go to filter, render, and lens flare. But the problem here is you would have to guess the position right here. It works pretty good, but you would have to guess the position. You can't actually see the image as you adjust the points. Have a look at this. It's all black. Yes, you can find out the exact location in terms of pixels and then dial it here. It can be done, but then again, it just so is not so convenient. So only if we could have a way to add a lens flare independently on top of the layers, that would be great. And also some more lens flare options. We're just so bored with the same old options. The vanishing point feature in Photoshop allows you to consider the perspective while adding graphics or doing cloning or healing work. And we have made videos about that. You can watch it right here. But the major problem here is that it doesn't work with curved surfaces. So let's say we have a surface like this. If we go to filter and then vanishing point, yes, we can create a plane here, just like this. But the problem is there is no way we can actually curve this plane. The video which I made about adding graphics to steps, a lot of Photoshop creators in the comments asked me what to do if they have a curved surface. Right now, there is no simple option. So I really wish that we can really have a handle which we can use to curve this, just as we do with the warp feature. The next one is we definitely need a simpler workflow or maybe a different filter for displacement map. So right now, let's say we wanted to add text to this rock texture and we're going to type stay safe. All right, let's change the color to white and make it a little larger. Now let's convert this into a smart object by going to filter and then convert for smart filters, hit OK. And now To make the brightness levels match, double click on the right hand side of the layer. This opens up the layer styles dialog box, and then you can take it away from the dark areas to just take it away from the crevices and just adjust it accordingly by holding the Alt key or the Option key, clicking on the slider, break it apart, right? This is looking good. This is not bad. However, there's one thing that we need to do. We need to adjust it according to the little bumps right there. And the way we do that is by using displacement maps. And here is the problem. To apply the displacement map, we have to create a displacement map. And this process goes so long. You would have to select the background layer, right click on it, make a duplicate layer, and we have to make a new document as a duplicate. And we have to take away the colors, then we have to blur it a little by going to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur, probably just a little bit. 7.6 works, and then save it as a displacement map by going to File, Save As, and let's name this DISP. All right, click on Save. Now, if you have to apply displacement map here, you have to select that layer, you have to go to Filter, Distort, and then Displace, and then apply and guess these numbers, horizontal and vertical scale. Hit OK, and then locate that, then open that, and only then this is applicable. See these bumps right there? If you want to change the bump height, you can go back to displacement map. There is no preview for it. You would have to change and do some trial and errors. Hit OK again, locate the file again, hit open. It's not very convenient. What if in the displacement map dialog box itself, we could have a box or a section for selecting the source, and we could choose the background layer or any other layer as source, and there could also be a blur option for the displacement map. It would be so convenient, and also we would love to have a preview here as well so that we can see the bumps in real time as we dial in. And instead of numbers, what if we had sliders? More convenient, right? And then the world would be a better and easier place to live in. The last one on my wish is that I wish that smart filters wouldn't turn off when we transform those objects where smart filters are applied. For example, let's say I wanted to add my logo right here or my branding right here. So I have my branding right here. So I'm just going to drag it and drop it into Photoshop just over this. Pretty good. Now hit enter or return. Now this is in black. I want it in white. So I applied an invert smart filter by pressing Ctrl or Command I. As you see, it added an invert smart filter. The problem is though, when I press Ctrl or Command T, this dialog box shows up, which means that it's gonna turn off the smart filter as you transform and only apply it back when you confirm the change. So if you go forward, see, I can't really see how it would look in white as I adjust the position and the size. I have to make a guess. So let's say it's gonna look good right here in white, and once I apply it, only and only then it's gonna apply the smart filter. So I really wish smart filters would work real time. Now I understand that it can be a real challenge to apply it in code, but this is what I want. So please do this, Adobe. I would be very thankful to you. Because if you apply something as simple as drop shadow, so let me delete the smart filter. So if we apply a layer style by double clicking on the right hand side of the layer, and we apply something like a color overlay, and if we do it this way and we apply white as the color overlay and hit OK, this way we can do it. We can adjust it, we can move it around. It works in real time. The same thing, but smart filters don't work. I wish it would. I'm not just talking about the invert smart filters, but other smart filters that really make a big difference. So these are the 16 little features, fixes, and improvements that I would really love to see in the upcoming versions of Photoshop. I understand that as a software company, you have to introduce new, big, and amazing, awesome features just to keep it going. After all, innovation is the name of the game. And I love all these features. Please never stop. But in the process, this video was just created to highlight the little features that might need a little attention. And these are the little features that make the Photoshop experience seamless and enjoyable. Thank you so much again for watching this. I truly appreciate your time. If you like this video, make sure to give us a like, and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe. Ring the bell so that you don't miss any other future tips, tricks, or tutorials. I would love to take this moment to thank all these nice and amazing people for supporting PiXimperfect on Patreon and helping keep PiXimperfect free for everybody forever. Thanks so much again. I'll see you in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.